Welcome to Classics Confidential. I'm here talking to Dr Ursula Rothe, who's a lecturer in classical studies at the Open University, and we're going to talk about Roman dress, which Ursula's been working on. Why is it useful and interesting to look at what people wore in the ancient world?
Well, dress is a very special type of material culture. It allows us to see really interesting things. It's something that's quite personal, but it's also something that's quite public. It's something that expresses something about people. What you wear when you get up in the morning says something about you. What you have in your wardrobe says something about you. And I work mainly on images of people on gravestones, and so of course what you choose to put on this very expensive monument that it was planned sometimes for a long time in advance is an important consideration of how you depict yourself to the world after you've died. So it's a communication of identity that is kind of unique in the way that it can express these things.
So, in what regions of the ancient world do you work on specifically?
I work mainly on the northwestern provinces of the Roman Empire, so Gaul and the Rhine provinces, so modern France and western Germany, and also the Danube provinces, so Noricum and Pannonia, roughly modern Hungary and Austria. These are places where we have a lot of these gravestones. We have a lot of evidence for dress. We don't have that all over the empire.
And what do the gravestones tell you about how people were using dress to construct themselves, their identity in those regions?
It's very interesting because the dress styles that we find are very varied. You might be tempted to think that people chose from stock images and didn't really give it any thought, but no gravestone two gravestones are alike actually in this region. Obviously there are similarities, but it's clear that there weren't just stock monuments.
So
and that
individuality was really important.
Yes. Yeah. So we can take those images as individual statements, and we find huge variation in dress behaviour across that region. Can
you give some examples of the kind of things that people were wearing?
Yes. Well, one of the most striking differences across that region is that throughout the whole Roman period in the Danube provinces, so Noricum and Pannonia, throughout the period for which we have these stones, and in the case of Noricum and Pannonia, 1,500 of these stones. So from the early 1st century AD to the end of the 3rd century AD, so quite a long time period, the local women wore Iron Age native dress styles that were regional, that had regional styles, and they wore them pretty much unchanged throughout the whole Roman period.
What did they look like? Just a vague. I know they're all different, but is there sort of some commonalities?
Yes, they are. They are all exactly the same in the combination of the garments. It's just in the style of those garments that they're different. So it's a long-sleeved bodice, a long skirt, and then a loose tube dress over the top with brooches on the shoulders. It's held on the shoulders using brooches.
Yeah.
And a belt, and a hat, and a cloak. And that doesn't change throughout the whole of the Northwest. That is Iron Age women's dress. It's the same combination. It's just the style of the hat, the style of the overtunic, all these things are different from region to region, but the combination of garments is the same.
And it was about how they wear them?
Yes.
Is it like the hat, it's kind of tilted at different angles, or is it...
Just completely different styles of hat. We have boat-shaped hats that are made out of fur. We have sort of huge kind of beret-like sort of bonnets.
How do you know they're made out of fur if they're on a sculpture?
Well, we think so because it's worked roughly on the stone.
Okay.
It's been sort of pitted deliberately, so that's
to reflect the texture of the fur, maybe.
Yeah, because there's a lot of detail on these stones. A lot of detail went on to these stones, and there's a lot of heavy metal jewellery as well, which is quite typical of these dress styles. And it's exactly those brooches at the shoulders. On the Rhine, you have also in the beginning of the 1st century, you also have these regional Iron Age women's dress styles, and they disappear from the gravestones towards the end of the 1st century AD, and so do the brooches in the graves. They disappear. So they don't just disappear from the gravestones, they just seem to be, the brooch dress disappears, but it's replaced certainly on the stones, and one could argue generally, by a new native dress style that wasn't Roman dress. It was a new native dress style that became a general, not a regional, but a general dress across the whole of Gaul, the Rhineland, probably Britain as well.
So would it be correct to use the word fashion for this sort of area of study? I mean, things going in and out of fashion, but also the sense of like fashion as a thing and something that people try to follow.
Fashion's funny. So I've written about fashion, and it's a very specific term, and it's a very specific sort of social phenomenon. It requires certain criteria. It needs to be sort of conscious change. It needs to be sort of rapid enough to be sort of discernible, and it needs to be sort of deliberate change, and it needs to be change for change's sake, not sort of practical change. You require all sorts of different things for this to be meaningful, like social mobility, showing off, cultural knowledge, all this kind of stuff. So clothing that changes is not necessarily fashion.
Right.
I think there are other reasons for clothing to change, among other things, cultural influences. So we do have Roman dress appearing on our gravestones in various places to various extents, and you can map that onto different social groups in society. That's not necessarily fashion, that might be something else. And
but the things that you have mentioned that you do see as fashion, do you see those in the Danube regions?
Well, what I've argued is that what you have in these regional dress styles is a continuation of pre-Roman dress styles. But what you see changing, even though the dress styles don't change, what you see rapidly changing is the style of the brooches, the style of the belts, the accessories, the jewellery, everything that goes with it changes very rapidly, and we have lots of different types of brooches and really weird things sort of coming into brooch styles, and lots of brooch workshops in the towns bringing out all manner of different styles, and people buying them and wearing them on the gravestones, in the graves, and also we find them in settlements. So we know there's just a huge variety of brooches. And I would argue that that's fashion.
That's fashion. So you've got this combination of like tradition in the vestments, and then innovation and fashion maybe in the brooches.
Yes.
All in one body.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
And that's quite important because these dress styles have traditionally been seen very much in terms of sort of folk costumes and national costumes, and the women were very conservative wearing these clothes. They must have been very conservative, and that's, I think, if you have a look at the rapid change in the actual accessories, you realise that it had real life of its own, and a real sort of it progressed and changed and over time, and it was quite innovative actually as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much for telling us about that.
You're very welcome.